Namen der Freunde heiße ich Sie hier heute Abend zu unserem letzten Ausstellungsgespräch vor den Sommerferien. Herzlich willkommen. It's with tremendous pleasure that I'm welcoming Neïl Beloufa. He spent several sleepless nights to install this incredibly big show, which you will later see upstairs. He didn't do so alone. He did it with a wonderful team of the Secession, but mainly with his collaborators and partners. Lea Longis, who I want to name here explicitly by name. It's very important also for Neïl that he works in a collective situation. It's Lea Longis, Dylan Ledine, Florian Fournier, Hugo Boissou, and Pierrick Saillant. So thank you very much to whoever of you is here for your dedication and for your input in this exhibition. Axel Stockburger, I'm very lucky because he accepted the role of introducing Neïl to you tonight. Axel Stockburger is an associate professor at the Academy of Arts next door, teaching art and cultural studies. As an artist, he works in video and digital media. He's a member of the artist platform Technopolitics and board member of the Secession. Axel, I'm giving over to you. I want to just announce that Q&A will not be possible because we have an exhibition shortly following this talk, but Neïl will be here and happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thanks to the friends of the Secession, and particularly Sylvie Lischka for the introduction. Welcome everybody on such a hot day. It's great you're all here. I would also like to thank Bettina Spör, who curated the project and worked together with Neïl and his team on this amazingly rich and complex exhibition that you're about to see later on. Let me now briefly introduce Neïl. He has French-Algerian roots, was born in 1985 in Paris, and at present lives and works in Montreux, but many other places also. His work has been shown most recently at Clearing in Brussels, as well as in a very expansive exhibition at Pirelli Hangar in Milan, Bicocca. And he had solo exhibitions in a whole range of places. You've done almost everything, from Xi'an Kunsthalle in Frankfurt, Palais de Tokyo 2 times, Venice Biennial 2 times, and then nominations for a whole range of prizes, Prix Marcel Duchamp, Artes Mundi, and the Namjoon Paik Award. I'm going to stop here. If you want to read up on the impressive list, you can do that. So your exhibition here at Secession is your first institutional show in Austria, but I remember personally first coming in contact with your work in an exhibition at the artist-run space Saprofut. This was organized by Barbara Kapusta and Stefan Lugbauer. It was entitled An Archived Causality Looped. And back then, you were exploring the possibilities of producing a film during the exhibition, whereas the props for the film then turned into elements of the installation. Since then, you've been extraordinarily prolific and productive, developing a practice that encompasses film, video installation, as well as sculptural interventions, and lately complex forms of hybridization between on and offline works of art. So I believe that there are very few artists at present who are exploring the fundamental transformation brought about by digital culture in such a detailed manner as you currently do. And by this I mean that you're critically experimenting with issues such as authorship, how production can be organized, issues of versioning. Elements of works are recomposed in novel compositions and constellations continuously, and they stay fluid in some sense. The increasing fragmentation of audiences is a subject. Hybridity between immaterial and material aspects of art is at the foreground. You're thinking about economical logics and circular economies, the centrality of communication, co-presence of multiple perspectives in the shows, and also the notion, if you want, of the systemic. So now a lot of things have been said already, and I hope we have enough time to touch upon some of them. So there's a last thing that I wanted to mention, and in a way, the way I've been following your work reminds me a lot of the ending scenes of Akira, the animation film. You know, when all these things are added together and everything just grows and keeps on growing and gets larger and larger, and it has this kind of enormous vitality. So first, I'd like to ask you, how did you first encounter digital culture, right? I think we have like 10 years difference we established before. So you kind of entered when that was already alive in some way. How was that for you?
It was I worked in a cyber coffee. No, it was a weekend job when I was in high school, and then I started to make website and play video games.
So you played a lot of games also.
But I was bad, so I was a website person.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, and so I worked. It became a job, and I was doing the websites for video game and pro gamers when they started in the cyber coffee.
That's amazing. So in a way, games were always there from the start.
But I was bad always. But yeah.
But as a logic, there
Yeah.
sort of was a thing that does something, and we will get back to this, I think. What I'd first like to ask you about is this, because that's quite clear when you look at, but you also hear that you have produced this show here together with EBB or app. How do you actually call it? App. And that's there when in the invitation you see app and Neïl Beloufa, but also in all your various works over the last 10 years, you always have sort of mixed versions of authorship and collaboration with people. So I'm just curious about this a little bit, what that means to you to play with versions or possibilities of authorship.
It's not rational. I mean, it's just I like working with people, and I don't believe I don't really believe in authorship. But I like working with people, and I have a big problem is that I'm an artist, and this is a big problem because like I'm not allowed to credit, and if I dilute the brand, my surplus value falls, and then the stuff far less expensive, and I cannot work with a lot of people. So this is a bit the problematic, and then so we try to find solutions around that.
But in a way, it seems to me that this already sort of begins with making films, right?
Yeah.
Because in a film, you're always a group of people that do things together.
And it's legal, but
and it's legal, and you can do that. But now you've also entered other avenues, like say programming, where you have people who work on the game that you have developed and so on. So, but there's also a notion in a way, maybe that's quite early to tackle that, but I find that very interesting, that you also invite the audience to participate in various different ways in your projects.
What interests me in art is interaction with society. So I signed up for that thing for that. Mm-hmm. And I believe that the forms are secondary to the constraint that create them. Mm-hmm. So I never had the dream of having the capacity of making installations that can fill an airport. But White Cube happened, so I learned, and the constraint created the form, and so basically, so I try to create the constraint that interest me for the model of distribution and production that it will create, and then the form comes. So integrating people is not. I mean, it's the practice. I cannot, like, I just do constraint and I see how people can work with. I mean, that's a bit where my practice lies.
That makes a lot of sense to me, because in a way people are there from the beginning, from your earliest film, like the Kempinski film. There are people talking, and you use that a lot, sort of interviews and people who talk about their own station in life or their ideas or projections and so on. So they're there, but then it gets complicated and it gets refracted and so on. There's something about it. I mean, this is incredibly hard to enter in a way, and I thought a lot how to enter this kind of in a way. And I came across a philosopher who wrote about games recently, a guy called C.T. Ngui, American philosopher who thinks about games as the art form of agency, right? So he says that's a direct quote. When playing games, we can adopt alternative agencies, and we can do so for aesthetic reasons, right? So it seems to me that what you're doing in a lot of your work is distributing agency, right? Like algorithmic agency, but also non-human agency, the economic people, or the agency that comes from elements within art making. How do you see this kind of playing with different kinds of agency?
Yeah, yes. No, but no, but I like to turn around things, and to because there is something that is that everything that is tried always fail. Like there is no success, or voluntarily or not, but even like there is always a problem and it doesn't work and it becomes. So basically, like the only thing you can do is like to keep the wheel turning, and so you rotate around the same thing and you never find a way to go. So you try, and maybe that's an answer. But
yeah, no, but in this experimental form of like trying, attempting, when you say fail, can it fail in the art world? When you look at it from that perspective, or isn't that also built in already? Sort of, does it?
No, but it's always looping and not failing because it's art, but it's always fine, and no one cares. And the more you fail, the bigger it becomes, or something like that. But I'm not talking about. No, but there is I have an agenda, or I have several agendas, and I cannot. And this is, but that's personal. That's not on a professional level, or.
Okay. Maybe because I have a whole range of other questions that we can go to, but before I would sort of start to talk about the project here and just ask you a little bit about what we're going to see later on. And if I understand correctly, there is a whole history to it already, right? So, as we said before, there's a lot of recombination of elements, or things reappear, and at the root of this show there is a project you did at Banff, right, which already engaged with the pandemic in a sense. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about some of these elements that lead to the project we have here now. Also screen talk, maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
No, so the project here is now like it's supposed to be a satire of the recent moment we've been living, and the transformation of society and those elements, and to play with it both on a subject level but also on a formal level, try to answer structurally to the things. And it's based around a video from 2014, and it's clearly out of opportunism. So it's a video that was called "Home is Whenever I'm With You," that was shot in Banff, and the script was that there was a global pandemic, and people were hiding at their home and spoke only through Skype. And the symptoms were like weird hands trying to sell things on the internet, and people, so that video didn't make sense, and it was shown once in Banff, more or less, and no one ever cared, and it didn't make sense even for me. And then it looked like it made a lot of echo to the lockdowns, and because. We had that unused material, and I wanted to continue to work during lockdown because I was a bit pissed off.
So that's how it turned into sort of an online game of sorts.
Because so I work with a lot of people, and and you cannot stop working because
the machine has to.
No, because
running.
you have to live also, and so it was interesting. We looked at the lockdown as a beta test of the shitty world to come, and so the idea was to see how you function within that world, and so there were two choices, and one was a bourgeois décroissant. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. So degrowth bourgeoisie and plant stuff. So I tried, but it was not successful. And the other was like to try to use the internet for decentralization qualities and try to find a way to distribute culture through that and bring critical distance towards that area. And so we recycled that video into a mini-series with a video game. Mm-hmm. And we did organize a small decentralized distribution. Mm-hmm. So we asked 10 institutions to give us micro money, and 500 or even 300, but to finance. And they would distribute one after the other. Mm-hmm. And that stuff, when you were watching the episode and playing stupid quiz that are here still.
So just to understand how it works, is like you play a quiz and then you get to see more episodes, basically.
But basically, no one wants to see the episodes. So it's like so we give fake money, mm-hmm. and at the end, with the fake money, you had artworks that you can fold. That now are the tickets here. Okay. But that you can fold, and they were how to say? They were taking blockchain blocks to certify they were unique.
Okay, it was like bullshit. An NFT.
It wasn't. It was not an NFT. It was a bit bullshit, but we tried. Okay. And it didn't work economically at all. And but it worked in terms of diffusion. So it had 80,000 people watching over 6 months, and for me it's big.
Yeah, that is big.
But they didn't watch like people don't watch, but they come at least. But and also like I use numbers from mostly the press, because the videos that the New York Times used for press got 35,000 people. So it's not really us, but still there was something that was dynamic, mm-hmm. And out of that, the idea was like to start working always on 2 levels, to have a digital twin or physical twin.
So and to all never the shows you did since then basically has this double logic in a way.
Like I don't want ever in my life to
to not
have to be locked, to not have the capacity of doing something, and so we looked for strategies, and the world reopened, and so here it's like the physical twin. So that was
and so that means here you can also play the game in a live situation, but you also have the online possibility to kind of communicate.
We're going to open it in 3 weeks. Reopen the. But and like and.
There is something I want to ask you in detail about an aspect. This is extremely complex up there. You will later see this, but I'm very fascinated with what these hosts, as I think you call them, right? The characters you use to engage with the audience, how they directly address viewers. I find that really interesting because, in a way, they're really like artworks talking to you, like, hey, engage with me, talk to me, and do that in a way. So I wonder how that relates to this problem of attention economy, that where everything is kind of like doing that too, sort of whether that was your direction of thought here.
They were produced during the show at Lily at Hangar Bikoka, mm-hmm. and the concept, because I wanted a retrospective there, and I didn't want to do a cemetery for myself, so they were built there to be working like flux algorithms, and so basically there were all the works that I could find in the show, but they would display them only for 2 minutes or the maximum attention span that people have in a museum. Mm-hmm. So they were fighting. One was a right wing. I mean, he's still right wing, but there was one right wing, one progressist, and one liberal, and they were fighting to defend the works and and trying to get audience, because yeah, to reproduce what we see and also to. And so, but what was funny is that the attempt there is that they would show 2 minutes like a trailer, and then like no one can watch at the end. It's like a bad party, but we had the QR codes, and I hate the passwords for people to go watch at home. But that was the game.
So, but they literally come to you and say, watch me, do this, and kind of compete with each other. And I find that really is like a very good metaphor to engage with what attention economy does in a way. So I really like that a lot. But there's also something, and that's really a question because I'm not sure I fully understood that yet. So maybe you can tell me how that works. That now there's this idea that they are also controlled from or can be controlled from the outside.
But it failed.
Okay, so that's not.
No, it failed. But
what was the attempt? Like you were trying to do produce like a DAO, right? For
a joke DAO, but no, okay. but basically I say we, but it's not me. But the coders, they develop programs to automatize and many things. So you can speak on Discord, and it makes them speak. You can send video on Discord, and they can diffuse it. You can they have live Twitch, and they have Twitter accounts. You can make them do that.
But I think it's a really interesting proposal because in a way you bring together two different audiences, right? So if this would, as I said, as a proposal at least or a concept, right, this is happening. So you have people who are on Discord, on Twitch, like kind of interact via that, and they reach into sort of art space, gallery space or something. There's this meeting.
Yeah, they are supposed to be hosts, like to mediators or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, you will see them later upstairs. I think they're really, they really make a lot of sense. So, what I'd like to talk about a little bit now is, I think that with your work, you kind of address a lot of general changes in the art system, right? We also talked about this a little bit before, and my personal sort of thesis about this is that digital culture really does affect and change how we think about art. So it means, you know, when you think about all the institutions and gatekeepers that were responsible for producing this system, the historical system, like the academy and the critics and all this, are now confronted with something very different, right? So these institutions change fundamentally, and you have taking their place to a certain extent are again attention economy, social media, and algorithms, right? And so I think you follow that in a way with your work, in different manifestations of your work. But one example that I found particularly interesting was Ennemi de mon ennemi, and where you had sort of the relationship between art and politics as a focus. The show that happened at Palais de Tokyo, and I found it super interesting that these things, various different things encounter each other there. So real artworks encounter a whole range of different expressions, cultural expressions, but they all meet in a way on a level playing field. Can you tell me something about this? Because I found that really astonishing. Somehow also a bit sad in a way. I don't know how to say, but I don't know.
No, but it was a sad exhibition, but the idea behind was to try to break dialectics and create possibilities out of what existed, but by reproducing also how we consume politics, how we consume image or culture, and to talk about that that weird position of someone that do cultural stuff, because at the end of the day I work for who pays me, so I'm in service of powers and ideologies that I don't especially defend, and the idea of the show was to put together things that have no connection besides the fact that they have a relation to power and form, and to see what it produces, and to make something where there is a possibility that is agonistic, not antagonistic, meaning like, I don't know, like the fact that pharmaceutical laboratory use vaccines to sell doesn't mean vaccines cannot exist too. Like addition strategy rather than putting two ideas and make them fight all the time, which is the way algorithm works on centralized platforms.
Yeah, the polarization logic that it tries to produce and propose.
I mean, I did a test with 2 accounts, which were mine, and both insulting each other, and it climbed super fast. Like it's
that's the logic. That's the algorithmic logic that works with attention economy properly. I mean, I thought that what happens there in a way is kind of almost like an attempt to do what happens online, namely that all things are of equal value next to each other. You might have a window open of an art exhibition, but then you have Netflix open, and then you're also booking a flight, and then you're maybe consuming something or buying something. All these things appear on the same level, right? And to some extent, I felt that this was happening there too. You kind of this equality. I don't know how to put it, or kind of similar value of all these entities that were shown.
But it wasn't a relativist gesture of saying like everything is the same. But to me, like there is first there is the decision of the viewer to put value. That is like that, because we try to take out when we curated or whatever we DJ'd it, we try to take out our personal affects out of the field, but by doing that, like we left a room for visitors to have their own, and without us to be judging or to control, and the idea was to make the visitor a bit crazy out of that, because then like there is no end goal and there is no construction and just deconstruction and stuff disappearing and working like a flux.
I guess that's precisely what makes one, or what one can feel, I think, with this impact of digital culture on traditional institutions, the kind of hierarchies and gatekeeping institutions, that if you suddenly take that away, what comes out, what remains, right? I feel that it's very much about this, to me at least.
But I separate art from art system, and so I truly think there is no difference between War Museum and the Contemporary Art Museum, besides the fact that it's a different ideology financed by someone else. But I truly think like mechanically it's the same, and it's not more virtuous. It depends on who you work for, but others. And what I think also that show was like me feeling more and more that I was locked in a loop of self-criticizing the things that I was doing, and so it was like try to put an end to circling around a symbolic political fight in a white cube, like hitting the wall, the white wall against someone that is totally agreeing with me, and like what.
Again, one of the bubbles. Right?
Yeah. So it's.
But maybe I should also. I was wondering whether I should ask you this, but I am curious. What do you think about, let's say, the cultural economy of these, let's say, current blockbuster shows, the huge shows, of which you have produced some? The kind of the sense they are spectacular and massive, and kind of how they speak and how they What do you think about this as a medium? I mean, this kind of exhibition, sort of.
No, but like, so personally, no. What interests me is that it has the capacity to touch a different audience, and that's something that. Even if it's a ridiculous movement, loss of energy or testosterone or whatever negative stuff it brings with it, there is a capacity or the authorization to try to touch society and not to touch just the echo chamber.
Yeah, and in a sense, I would assume that all your attempts to hybridize in this sense, right, to talk to different online communities and so on, is something goes in the same direction, right? So you want to kind of achieve a possibility to connect with as many different audiences, because since they are in that weird way fragmented.
But also like the people I work with are different. I come from different. That's what I like in life also, to speak to different people. And
so they bring their own kind of audiences with them.
And again, like it's really like what interests me is society and mechanics of society and how you try to participate society in order to, I don't know, like for what, but like for it to be less shitty maybe, or I don't know, but try at least. And the society is like with different people, like
of course.
So
I'm feeling when you say that, I'd like to move a little bit to the question of economy, because I think a lot of what you do has a deep interest into economical problems, like from your perspective of production on the one hand, how to produce differently, but also in a sense how to critique economy. Maybe you can talk a little bit about this, like exploring different kinds of economy from within art system and without.
No, but there is that I think the nerve of war is economy, because by default we are in a big Ponzi capitalist machine. And so working with it, like the only way to be active, because I didn't find another way, but I don't believe, again, like I don't think creativity or whatever, like beauty can. I think it's just about the capital that is assigned to it, or the way it's distributed, or the way it's where it comes from, to whom it's paid. Which, like, I think that's where personally, I totally agree with people that don't. But so working on, so it's both a subject that interests me, but it's also something that I generate an economy and I work with humans, so we can experiment the way we use the money and the way we do the thing. And like it, but it interests me at it's funny because that's it's the thing that is the less symbolic in an artistic practice, the economy. Like that, at the moment it becomes real in a negative way, but it's real. Like there is a risk, there is a potential, there is a. So working with, I don't know what to say. I'm turning a bit in a
I'm also wondering because you did deliberately begin to play with, let's say, elements of crypto economy and all this kind of the much hyped NFT logic and all this, and there has been lots of critique in the art world about these phenomena, but you're quite curious about them, right? The way I understand. So, how does that compare to the classic logic, let's say?
No, but what is interesting is that this is the first time in my adult life that I see possibilities. But possibilities because the symbolic is dead with that. The image is dead, and it's just a mechanic. It's pure economic mechanic, but it creates societies. In the way this mechanic is organized, the way a social token get distributed, redistributed, the way someone use it, it's quite fascinating because you see 14 years old people that propose political model, economical and political models, and also it's a way to monetize attention economy, which is the thing that we don't monetize, which is bigger than oil, which we generate and makes us work for machines. And the fact that you can reverse that and make that a like is not a useless machine to show a plate of fruits, but becomes a small finance and a small collaboration and a small, like, is to me is like a possibility to do things with people, and so that's why I'm interested in Web3 and stuff like that.
You said something really interesting here, and to me, when you talk about possibilities of Web3, of course I have to remind myself and remember the first time this happened around 2000, Web 1.0, if you want to call it that, and then again with extreme platformization. So personally, I'm a little bit less optimistic about this, but what I find incredibly interesting is when you say that there's a devaluation of images, sort of. Did I get you correctly, that kind of images, the death of the symbolic or devaluation of images? And that, coming from somebody who works within the arts and with images, I find that quite an astonishing thing to say. But I do agree, in a way. I find it quite fascinating to which extent images are circulating and are produced by everybody, exchanged by everybody, and so on. So what remains to be done is something else, almost, right?
Yeah.
The economic system behind.
No, but I truly think that it's the end of the war of image, but it's the end of the war of image even for brands or for, and that's positive because we hit so many things under image, and like, yeah, like now it's like about I think, but I think that also politically at the scale of the planet that is burning, and
so in
it's
a way,
like it's about not saying you do or showing a good image, but like trying to find a mechanic. And I think those tools are just about the mechanic and are transparent about it, and I think they're going to replace. And also we have AIs that do way better image than anything I can do. So it's like there is no point fighting.
I wonder how all that relates to these long periods of iconoclasm. I don't know, just personally, I find that interesting that for such a long time, the power of the image was seen to be so strong that you had to control it, right? So power had to really control it. And the opposite has happened in a way, but it leads to a complete devaluation of the image.
Yeah.
So you have this odd logic. Maybe there is one more thing that I want to get to, because it may have to do with this somehow. I don't know, maybe it does. And I feel that in a lot of your work, there is a coming together also of what one could call the real and the virtual. This is highly problematic, these terms, as we know. But in language from live action role playing, for example, this is talked about as bleed. You know, things bleed into each other. So we are at this meeting point, and I feel that that's something that almost in your first video works and installations, it continuously comes to this bleed moment where fiction and what we consider real meets. And I'd like to hear about what interests you about this moment particularly.
But it's like here with the show, I'm not even sure. Like it is a fiction until it works, or something like that.
Okay.
Like that's why I say fail, because most of the fiction remain fictions. But I truly believe. But it's a fiction, and I know it's bullshit. But at the same time, I believe. So that's my belief. So rationally, I know it's gonna fail. But but the fiction is, I think, like making people pay to play to an exhibition is reversing power, because then you give the capital to people that give time, and so not the capital to people that have capital. So you rely on entries and a wilder audience that might be younger than a dominant machine that is preserving and protecting something that is still going to speak about the same subject in 20 years from now. And
okay, so you're spot on, kind of looking at this transformation of what the art system
or cultural consumption
is now generally affected by, right?
Yeah, the way we can consume culture. But at the same time, it is it's funny because like it allows me to start to make a company name before mine. It starts to be something that is more horizontal. It starts to be like it creates a chain reaction that will fail, but.
So you're planning to
So it's a fiction
to slowly exit from this.
When it fails, I'll say it was art, and if it doesn't, I'll say it was on purpose. Like,
is there anything you would like to? You would like us to know that we need to know before we go upstairs and engage with the installation? In terms of just really because we did begin to talk about it, but how this game works, just an intro, sort of, for us to.
No, so you are tracked. You have a ticket. You can show it to many QR scan everywhere, so to most of the works, and you you gain sense stocks market when you reply to a question well, and you are taxed, so you can go also to a defiscalization roulette.
So you can lose all your money again.
And yeah, and no, and what is funny is no, I don't know, like the game is like not on special capacities. It's more about like losing time because it's not well designed. It's like not a really like there are better games, but the attempt is like. With time, you get the stuff, and that I like. So, but it's real. I don't know what, but try.
Yeah, no, I think I invite everybody to do that. We have a few minutes left, so I have a chance to ask some small things. Maybe we already did talk about that, but I'd like to return to that a little bit. Namely, this kind of, on the one hand, the devaluation of the image. We talked about that, the end of the symbolic. On the other hand, this kind of intense sensual overload that seems to be present in a lot of your recent works. There's a term for this also in sort of online kind of theory about what the internet does at the moment, namely infoglut, right? So you just there's just too much stuff, and it's impossible to decide, or you either you enter and you give up, or sort of there's no way to deal with it. So what does that mean for you organizing shows? To be confronted with this issue or this problem.
But the way I do things is that I just copy models. Mm-hmm. So I reproduce. I mean, my job. Actually, it's funny, but before I was saying that my job as an artist was to represent society. So it's super easy, like there is chaos, I'm gonna do chaos, and that's like boom, boom, and one-to-one relation.
But there's more than that, I feel, because there
but if you push the chaos and you try to find a structure to it, then it becomes a critical chaos, and that's the moment you do your job a bit. When you take a logic, you don't judge, but you make it work in a way that highlights bones and make it like tremble or not work as efficient as it is usually, or make laugh. Like if it could be funny, it's better.
Yeah, that's really also kind of working towards when things don't work almost directly, sort of the glitch or when something doesn't function and that makes something visible. Is that also something you deliberately try to put on stage, let's say, at times, or is it something that just happens and then that's fine?
No, but because it's like if you do an interview with a real estate agent, you think you're looking at a comedy.
Yeah,
probably. And if you give a mic to anyone in a bar and you say you're president, like this is not judging, but it's like if you give me a mic in a bar, I'll explain to you how to solve the problems of Austria super fast.
Okay, can we do that now too?
Like,
we have another 3 minutes.
But I mean, it's so it's interesting to create those systems that I think reveal stuff about society and in a funny way without violence but create a critical distance to it, but just by being like
by putting things into play and
and like some rules and then
it really is more and more we're talking now. I feel like there's this game logic to it that makes the stuff visible, and I think that's one of the few ways of dealing with systemic problems. Contingency that we're kind of confronted with is game logic, because it reveals the different agencies of different people at different places in different positions in a system and so on. Yeah. Well, then what leaves for me to say is thank you really very much, and everybody who's working on the project. Super curious to see what you got for us, and thanks everybody for having been here, and let's look at the shows. No?
And thank you very much.